Ceres, the dwarf planet representing nurturance, sustenance, and the harvest, within the 8th house of the natal chart creates a profound psychological landscape where the act of caring is inextricably linked to the cycles of birth, death, and total transformation. In astrology, the 8th house is the realm of other people's resources, intimacy, and the subconscious shadows. When the Great Mother asteroid resides here, the individual's sense of security is not found in the simple comforts of the 4th house or the physical pleasures of the 2nd house, but rather in the depths of emotional alchemy. The nurturance of the shadow. For an individual with Ceres in the 8th house, the traditional definition of nurturing is often redefined. They do not feel cared for through mere physical proximity or superficial kindness. Instead, they feel most supported when their deepest, most private vulnerabilities are acknowledged and held. There is a primal need to be seen in one's darkness. Consequently, these individuals often provide a unique form of care to others. They are the ones who can sit with a grieving friend without flinching, or support a partner through a radical identity crisis. They find a sense of purpose in helping others navigate the underworld of the human experience. Intimacy as sustenance. In the 8th house, Ceres suggests that intimacy is a form of vital nourishment. However, this is rarely a light-hearted connection. There is often an all-or-nothing quality to their attachments. Because the 8th house governs shared assets and deep bonds, these individuals may express love through intense loyalty or by offering profound psychological insights to their partners. Conversely, if they feel neglected, the Ceres Proserpina myth may manifest as a deep fear of loss or abandonment. The wound of Ceres, the grief of the mother losing her child to the king of the underworld, is lived out through adult relationships, where the threat of emotional death or betrayal can feel like a famine of the soul. The harvest of transformation. One of the most potent expressions of this placement is the ability to find abundance in the wake of loss. Just as Ceres allowed the seasons to change, those with this placement understand that for something new to grow, something old must die. They are often exceptionally resilient, possessing an innate survivalist instinct. They may be drawn to professions or hobbies involving psychology, crisis management, hospice care, or even financial restructuring. They understand the value of compost, taking the waste and trauma of life and turning it into rich soil for future growth. Navigating the challenges. The shadow side of Ceres in the 8th house can involve issues of control and emotional manipulation. Because the need for deep connection is so strong, there may be a tendency to use care as a way to bind others to them, or to feel a sense of power over those they nurture. There can also be a struggle with inheritance, not just in the financial sense, but in terms of the emotional baggage passed down through the family line. Healing for this placement often involves learning that true nurturance does not require the total consumption of the other, and that one's internal harvest is sustainable even during periods of solitude. Ultimately, Ceres in the 8th house represents the soul's capacity to find grace in the grit. It is the signature of a person who finds the sacred in the secret, the healing in the hurting, and the life in the transition. They serve as a reminder that the most profound forms of love are those that are unafraid of the dark. To understand how Ceres in the 8th house functions across the zodiac, it is most effective to group them by element. The element of the sign determines the flavor of the transformative energy and how the individual seeks to find security within the 8th house's themes of intimacy and rebirth. The fire signs: Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. When Ceres occupies a fire sign, Aries, nurturing is found in the courage to face crises head-on. They feel most alive when they are pioneering through a psychological breakthrough. Leo, they find sustenance through dramatic expressions of intimacy. For them, being seen in their most vulnerable, private moments is the ultimate form of love. Sagittarius, transformation is viewed as a philosophical quest. They nurture themselves by finding a higher meaning or truth within their traumas and shared losses. The earth signs: Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. In earth signs, Ceres brings a grounded, pragmatic approach to the 8th house. Here, the underworld is handled with a sense of duty, and security is often tied to the physical or financial aspects of the 8th house. Taurus, there is a deep need for physical stability within intimate bonds. They may find comfort in the tangible legacy of others or through the sensory experience of deep union. Virgo, nurturance is expressed through the work of healing. They are the psychic surgeons, finding security in analyzing and fixing the messy, hidden parts of life. Capricorn, they take a disciplined approach to the shadow. Security is found in building long-lasting legacies and managing the business of shared resources with extreme competence. The air signs, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. For air signs, the 8th house is navigated through intellect and communication. Ceres here suggests that the individual needs to talk through the darkness to feel cared for. Gemini, curiosity is the tool for transformation. They nurture themselves by learning about the occult, psychology, or the mechanics of death and rebirth. Libra, security is found in the contract of the relationship. They feel nurtured when there is a fair and balanced exchange of energy, even in the deepest, most complex parts of a bond. Aquarius, they take a detached, objective view of intimacy. They may find nurturance in unconventional social structures or by understanding the collective subconscious. The water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. When Ceres is in a water sign in the 8th house, the placement is at its most intuitive and potent. There is no boundary between the act of caring and the depths of the soul. Cancer, this is a very protective placement. They nurture by creating a womb for others' transformations, but they must be careful not to drown in the emotional tides of their partners. Scorpio, Ceres is at home in the themes of the 8th house here. The individual thrives on intense, soul-level alchemy. Nurturance and power are often deeply intertwined. Pisces, transformation is a spiritual surrender. They find sustenance through total empathy and the belief that loss is simply a transition back into the universal consciousness. When Ceres transits your natal 8th house, the archetype of the goddess of the harvest descends into the underworld. This is a period characterized by a profound shift in how you seek and provide nurturance, moving away from the light of the surface and into the psychological deep. The 8th house governs intimacy, shared resources, and the cycles of transformation, making this transit a time of emotional alchemy. You are called to nurture the parts of yourself that are usually hidden, your shadows, your grief, and your most private desires. The cycle of loss and return. The myth of Ceres is defined by the abduction of her daughter, Persephone, and the subsequent winter of grief before their eventual reunion. During this transit, you may experience a symbolic winter in your emotional or financial life. This isn't necessarily a period of literal loss, but rather a time when you must face the reality that all things move in cycles. You may find yourself grieving old versions of yourself or navigating a temporary distance in a close relationship. The lesson here is learning to nurture yourself through the transition, understanding that loss is often the prerequisite for a more profound return or rebirth. Nurturing through intimacy and vulnerability. Intimacy takes on a sacred, life-sustaining quality while Ceres moves through this sector. You might find that small talk or casual connections no longer satisfy your hunger for depth. There is a nurturing via merging effect. You feel most supported when you can share your vulnerabilities with another person without judgment. Conversely, you may find yourself acting as a midwife for someone else's transformation, providing a grounded, maternal presence for a partner or friend going through a crisis. This transit highlights the importance of emotional safety within your closest bonds. Managing the harvest of shared resources. On a more practical level, the 8th house governs shared finances, inheritances, and debts. Ceres here can bring your attention to how you feed your financial stability through partnerships. It is an excellent time for tending to the soil of joint investments or clarifying how resources are shared in a marriage or business. You may feel a stronger need for security regarding taxes, insurance, or legacies. The goal is to ensure that these structures are truly sustaining you rather than draining you. Shadow work is soul food. Ultimately, a Ceres transit through the 8th house is an invitation to engage in shadow work as a form of self-care. By shining the nurturing light of Ceres onto your fears or repressed emotions, you take away their power to haunt you. You are learning that your darker feelings, jealousy, fear of abandonment, or the pain of past betrayals, deserve the same compassion and mothering as your more socially acceptable traits. When you feed these hidden parts of yourself with acceptance, you emerge from the transit with a richer, more resilient sense of personal power. Subscribe, like, and share.